Tragedy unfolding in a neighborhood in Galveston. Police say a 16-year-old is accused of shooting and killing her own mother. And now investigators are trying to figure out why. The shooting happened just before 8 o'clock last night at a home on Avenue Q near 52nd Street. Orko Mana spoke with the family today. He is live from the Galveston Police Department with the latest. Orko.
Well, Sherman, the mother of the woman who died told me over the phone that she heard the gunshots last night and said it was a complete surprise. She's wondering why her granddaughter could have done something like this, and that's the question police and neighbors want answered to.
The gunshots rang out at 7:49 p.m. on a Thursday evening in Galveston. Four distinct blasts that shattered the routine quiet of Avenue Q. Neighbors would later describe the sound as unmistakable. Not fireworks, not a car backfiring, but the definitive crack of a handgun being fired multiple times in rapid succession. Graciela Molina, who lived 3 doors down, heard the shots followed immediately by screaming. "I was washing dishes when it happened," she told reporters. "The noise made me drop a glass in the sink. By the time I got to my front window, I could see people running toward the house." When Galveston police arrived at the 5100 block of Avenue Q near 52nd Street, they found 34-year-old Tiamoya Moore collapsed on her front porch. Blood pooled beneath her body, spreading across weathered wooden planks. First responders worked frantically to stabilize her, applying pressure to multiple gunshot wounds as neighbors gathered behind hastily established police tape. Despite their efforts and the emergency transport to the hospital, Tiamoya Moore was pronounced dead that evening. What makes this story different from other homicides isn't just the brutality of a shooting on a residential street. It's who pulled the trigger. Tiamoya Moore wasn't killed by a stranger, an enemy, or even an angry partner. The person who ended her life was someone she had given life to, her own 16-year-old daughter. Tiamoya would have done anything for her children, says Alicia Giesinger, who described herself as both family and best friend to the victim. She was kind-hearted, loving. The type who would give you the shirt off her back without hesitation. Those who knew Tiamoya describe a woman of faith and determination. After spending time in California, she had returned to her hometown of Galveston to rebuild her life. She attended church regularly, sought stability for her family, and focused on creating a better future for her children. Friends noted her genuine smile, her willingness to help others despite her own struggles, and her unwavering belief that tomorrow could be better than today. She was turning things around, another family member shared. Getting back on her feet, making a home, putting her kids first in everything she did. The evening of September 11th, 2025, permanently halted that journey of redemption. What began as an ordinary Thursday ended with a mother's blood on her own doorstep and a daughter in handcuffs. If you're watching Crime Scene Exposed for the first time, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. We cover these difficult stories not for sensation, but to understand the complex human factors behind tragedy. While you're here, I'm curious, has your community ever experienced a family tragedy that shocked everyone? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and if cases like Tiamoya's resonate with experiences in your area. Initial reports from the scene described a suspect fleeing on foot after the shooting. Police began canvassing the neighborhood, collecting witness statements, and establishing a perimeter. But in a twist that stunned even experienced law enforcement, the shooter returned to the scene voluntarily while police were still processing evidence. Without resistance, Tiamoya's teenage daughter surrendered herself to authorities. A firearm was recovered near the home, believed to be the weapon used in the shooting. As the teenager was placed in a police vehicle, neighbors stood in shocked silence, trying to process how family violence had erupted so suddenly on their street. "You never think something like this will happen here," one resident told local news. "Not in this neighborhood, not between a mother and daughter." Galveston sits on a barrier island off the Texas coast, known for its beaches, historic architecture, and tight-knit communities. The city has weathered literal hurricanes, but the metaphorical storm that hit the 5100 block of Avenue Q that September evening left wounds that physical reconstruction cannot heal. For Tiamoya Moore, Galveston represents a home, a place to start fresh while surrounded by familiar streets and family connections. The modest house on Avenue Q wasn't just a residence, but a symbol of her determination to create stability. The porch where her life ended was the same place neighbors had seen her sitting with her Bible on Sunday afternoons, the same steps where her children had played. As news of the shooting spread through the community, those who knew Tiamoya struggled to reconcile the violent end with the gentle-spirited woman they had known. How could a mother's life be taken by her own child? What invisible fractures in their relationship had widened into a chasm that could only be crossed by violence? The answers would prove as complex as Tiamoya herself, a woman whose life contained both profound love and profound struggle, whose story forces us to look beyond simple explanations and into the complicated reality of family dynamics pushed to their breaking point.
A 16-year-old is now in custody facing murder charges, according to Galveston police, who say she allegedly shot and killed her mother, 34-year-old Tiamoya Moore. One family member told me she's not only heartbroken, but confused.
The last couple of days, I've been feeling like I'm losing my mind. I was questioning, like, why? Why would you do this to your own mama? I just can't believe she's gone, for real.
When you got the news,
I was devastated. Devastated. Didn't want to believe it. Tia will give you the shirt literally off of her back. Tia loved her kids, would do anything for her kids. She was very spiritual, very into God, changed her life around for God. I just want to know what really, like, what caused for that to get to this point to where you had to take your own mama's life.
Galveston police say just before 8, they responded here to Avenue Q, where they found the 34-year-old down on her porch with multiple gunshot wounds.
Suspect, it was reported at the time by witnesses that the suspect had fled the scene. While the location in the 5100 block of Avenue Q was an ongoing crime scene, at some point while investigators were there and performing their investigative duties, the suspect came back up on location, and she was taken into custody at that time.
Alicia tells me the family is processing this loss, including Tiamoya's other 4 children, who are now without a big sister and a mom.
Galveston Island exists in two worlds: the tourist beaches and historic districts that draw visitors, and the residential neighborhoods where real life unfolds. The 5100 block of Avenue Q belongs firmly to the latter, a working-class area where modest homes line streets named alphabetically, far from vacation postcards, but rich with community connections. This particular stretch of Avenue Q features single-story homes with small yards, most built in the 1960s and weathered by Gulf storms. American flags hang from some porches, children's bicycles rest against others. It's a neighborhood where people notice unfamiliar cars and where mail carriers know residents by name. For Tiamoya Moore, this neighborhood represented more than just affordable housing. It was a homecoming. After several years in California trying to build a different life, she had returned to Galveston with purpose and determination. Coming back wasn't giving up, explained her cousin during a family gathering after the funeral. It was Tiamoya recognizing where she could best succeed. She wanted her children to have family around them, to know their roots. Her return to Galveston in early 2024 marked the beginning of what she called her restoration journey. She secured a job at a local business, found the house on Avenue Q, and became more involved with her church community. Her social media posts from this period show a woman focused on positive affirmations and spiritual growth. "God isn't finished with me yet," read one caption beneath a sunrise photo taken from her front porch, the same porch where her life would end 18 months later. The household Tiamoya established included several of her children, with her 16-year-old daughter being the eldest at home. Family photos show birthday celebrations, beach outings, and holiday gatherings, normal moments that gave no indication of the fractures forming beneath the surface. Tiamoya's journey hadn't been without struggles. Her time in California represented a chapter of difficulty, but her return to Galveston signaled her determination to improve her circumstances. Friends noted her ongoing efforts to better herself and provide a stable environment for her children, reflecting her resilience in the face of adversity. She was working on improving her life, a family member shared. This improvement was both personal and spiritual. Tiamoya had embraced her faith more deeply since returning home, finding strength in her religious community and beliefs. The relationship between Tiamoya and her teenage daughter existed within this context of renewal and rebuilding. While the public image showed a mother dedicated to her children's well-being, behind closed doors, the dynamics had grown increasingly strained. Family members would later describe the teenager as troubled, though the full extent of these troubles remained private until tragedy brought them into public view. Neighbors on Avenue Q had occasionally witnessed tensions between mother and daughter, arguments that sometimes spilled outside their home, raised voices that carried through open windows on warm evenings. These conflicts, while noticeable, seemed to most observers like typical teenage rebellion rather than warning signs of potential violence. What no one fully appreciated was the depth of the disconnect growing between Tiamoya and her eldest daughter. The teenager's behavior had changed in ways that concerned her mother. Tiamoya had confided in close friends about her worries, expressing frustration and confusion over how to reach her increasingly distant child. The day of September 11th, 2025, began as an ordinary Thursday. Tiamoya followed her usual routine, attending to her responsibilities and family needs. Nothing in her interactions with neighbors or colleagues suggested she anticipated danger in her own home. The teenager's movements throughout the day gave no obvious indication of the violence to come. As evening approached and Tiamoya returned home to the 5100 block of Avenue Q, the stage was set for a confrontation that would tragically escalate beyond anyone's imagination. The modest home that Tiamoya had worked to make a sanctuary for her family would instead become the site of an unthinkable act of violence between mother and daughter. The neighborhood setting, with houses close together, front porches visible from the street, and neighbors who noticed comings and goings, meant that when violence erupted, it would not remain private for long. The community that had watched Tiamoya work to rebuild her life would soon become witnesses to its sudden, violent end. The first 911 call came from a cell phone at 7:51 p.m. "Someone's shooting on Avenue Q," a male voice shouted. "A woman is down on her porch." In the background, screams and commotion suggested a neighborhood in chaos. Galveston police units arrived at 7:55 p.m. to find Tiamoya Moore lying on her front porch with multiple gunshot wounds. Neighbors had already rushed to help, one applying pressure to her wounds with a beach towel, another cradling her head and praying. "She's still breathing," someone shouted as officers approached. Officer James Mendoza immediately radioed for emergency medical services, reporting female victim, multiple GSWs, critical condition. His body camera captured Tiamoya's final conscious moments, her eyes open but unfocused, blood spreading across the wooden porch boards beneath her. As paramedics worked frantically to stabilize her, police secured the perimeter and gathered initial witness statements. The description of the shooter was consistent, a teenage female in dark clothing who fled north on foot immediately after firing multiple shots. "I saw her run that way," a witness pointed toward 52nd Street. "Couldn't see her face clearly, but she was young, thin, moved fast." What no witness could immediately explain was why the shooting occurred. No one reported seeing an argument on the porch, just Tiamoya suddenly appearing at her door, followed by gunshots in rapid succession. The ambulance departed for UTMB Health Galveston at 8:04 p.m. with Tiamoya fighting for her life. Despite advanced medical intervention, doctors pronounced her dead at 8:42 p.m., 4 gunshot wounds having caused catastrophic blood loss and organ damage. Meanwhile, the investigation at the scene intensified. For shell casings were recovered from the porch and nearby grass. The front door stood open, revealing a house that showed signs of struggle, an overturned chair in the living room, a broken picture frame on the floor. A K-9 unit tracked the suspects sent north for several blocks before losing the trail near Broadway. Officers expanded their search, checking nearby businesses and gathering security footage. If you're finding this case as disturbing as we do, please take a moment to subscribe to Crime Scene Exposed. Your support helps us continue examining these complex tragedies. I'm curious, has your community ever experienced a family tragedy that shocked everyone? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The investigation took an unexpected turn approximately 40 minutes after the shooting. As police processed the crime scene and canvassed for witnesses, the suspect returned voluntarily to the location. Without prompting, she approached officers and identified herself as the shooter. Most shocking of all, she was Tiamoya's 16-year-old daughter. "I'm the one who did it," she reportedly told officers at the scene. This voluntary surrender transformed the investigation instantly. The teenager was taken into custody without incident, her calm demeanor in stark contrast to the violence that had just occurred. Police recovered a firearm near the crime scene, believed to be the weapon used in the shooting. Forensic examination would later confirm that this gun fired the bullets that killed Tiamoya. How the teenager obtained the weapon became a significant question in the investigation. The crime scene told a story of sudden, explosive violence. Tiamoya had been shot multiple times on her own front porch. Evidence suggested she had little opportunity to defend herself or escape the attack. The positioning of shell casings and blood patterns indicated she had been shot at close range, with no signs of an extended physical struggle beforehand. As investigators processed evidence and interviewed witnesses, they faced the challenging task of understanding what had led to this tragedy. With the suspect being Tiamoya's daughter, the case took on dimensions beyond typical homicide investigations. What could drive a child to kill her own mother? What warning signs might have been missed? Family members expressed shock and disbelief when informed of the circumstances. "We're confused and heartbroken," Alicia Giesinger told reporters. "We're trying to understand how this could happen." She described the family's pain and their struggle to make sense of the violence that had claimed Tiamoya's life. Giesinger's statements to media highlighted an important aspect of the case, the reality and seriousness of mental health challenges, particularly in young people. She emphasized the limits of what family and community can do when someone is deeply troubled, suggesting that the teenager had been experiencing significant issues prior to the shooting. "Mental health is real," Giesinger stated, pointing to the critical importance of awareness and intervention. Her comments reflected the family's belief that unaddressed psychological problems had played a role in the tragedy. The investigation revealed a household under strain. Tiamoya had been working to address her daughter's concerning behavior, but like many parents, faced challenges in accessing appropriate resources and support. The teenager's troubles had escalated over time, creating tension within the family that ultimately erupted in violence. As detectives pieced together the events leading to the shooting, they found evidence of ongoing conflict between mother and daughter. Witnesses from the neighborhood reported hearing arguments in the weeks before the tragedy. School records indicated the teenager had been experiencing difficulties with attendance issues and behavioral concerns noted by teachers and counselors. What made the case particularly disturbing was the apparent disconnect between the severity of typical parent-teen conflicts and the extreme violence that resulted. The multiple gunshot wounds suggested not a momentary loss of control, but a determined act, one that raised difficult questions about premeditation and intent. The teenager's behavior immediately following the shooting presented another puzzling element. After fleeing the scene initially, her decision to return voluntarily and surrender to police defied simple explanation. This action suggested a complex psychological state, perhaps remorse, resignation, or the realization of the irreversible nature of what she had done. During initial questioning, with appropriate legal representation present due to her juvenile status, the teenager provided limited information about her motives. Her statements, while not released publicly due to her age, reportedly indicated deep-seated resentment and a feeling of being trapped or controlled in her home situation. The investigation also focused on how the teenager obtained the firearm used in the shooting. This aspect of the case highlighted concerns about gun access and security, particularly in homes with troubled young people. The weapon had not been legally purchased by or registered to anyone in the immediate family, raising questions about its origin. As the criminal investigation progressed, a parallel inquiry began into the support systems that had failed both Tiamoya and her daughter. School officials reviewed their protocols for identifying and helping at-risk students. Community mental health providers examined the barriers that might have prevented the family from accessing timely intervention. The case laid bare the challenges facing families dealing with adolescent mental health issues. Tiamoya had been actively seeking help for her daughter, according to those close to the family. Yet, like many parents, she encountered waiting lists for services, insurance limitations, and a fragmented system ill-equipped to address escalating crises before they reach the breaking point. She was trying to get help, one family member told investigators. She knew something was wrong and was doing everything she could. This portrait of a mother attempting to navigate complex systems while managing day-to-day family life added another layer of tragedy to an already devastating situation. The police investigation concluded with the teenager being charged with murder in connection with her mother's death. She was placed in the Jerry J. Esmond Juvenile Justice Center pending further legal proceedings. The charge reflected the seriousness of the offense while acknowledging her status as a minor. For the investigators who worked the case, the tragedy on Avenue Q represented one of the most difficult aspects of law enforcement, confronting violence that occurs within families between people who should share the strongest bonds of love and protection. The crime scene, with its evidence of a life suddenly and violently ended on her own porch, stood as a stark reminder of how quickly family conflict can escalate to irreversible tragedy. As the case moved from investigation to prosecution, the focus shifted to the juvenile justice system and how it would address a crime that defied easy categorization. The facts were clear. Tiamoya Moore had died from multiple gunshot wounds inflicted by her teenage daughter. But the why behind those facts remained elusive, tangled in the complex relationship between a mother trying to rebuild her life and a daughter whose troubles had culminated in an act of deadly violence. The community of Galveston, particularly the neighborhood surrounding the 5100 block of Avenue Q, was left to grapple with the aftermath. Neighbors who had witnessed Tiamoya's efforts to create stability for her family now watched as police tape surrounded her home and investigators cataloged the evidence of her final moments. The tragedy forced difficult conversations about mental health, family support, and the sometimes invisible struggles taking place behind closed doors. For those who knew Tiamoya as a devoted mother, a woman of faith, and someone committed to personal growth, the manner of her death seemed particularly cruel. The person she had given life to and sacrificed for had taken her life in an act that would forever alter both their stories. One ended too soon, the other now defined by a moment of violence that could never be undone. The flashing lights of police vehicles illuminated Avenue Q long after Tiamoya's body had been transported to the medical examiner's office. As evidence technicians worked the scene, the 16-year-old suspect sat in the back of a patrol car, her expression unreadable behind the window. Processing a juvenile murder suspect follows strict protocols distinct from adult cases. Officers couldn't question her without appropriate representation present. They couldn't parade her before news cameras or release her name publicly. Despite the severity of the crime, her age afforded her protections that would shape every aspect of the case moving forward. She remained largely silent, answering only direct questions with minimal responses. By midnight, a juvenile transport van delivered her to the Jerry J. Esmond Juvenile Justice Center, a facility designed specifically for underage offenders. Unlike adult jails with their harsh concrete and steel environments, the center maintains a more rehabilitative atmosphere, though security remains paramount. Here, the teenager would be held pending her initial court appearance. The Texas juvenile justice system operates under a fundamentally different philosophy than the adult system. While adult courts focus primarily on punishment, juvenile proceedings emphasize rehabilitation and the best interests of the child. This distinction becomes particularly strained in murder cases where the severity of the crime collides with the legal protections afforded to minors. For prosecutors, the case presented immediate challenges. Texas law allows juveniles as young as 14 to be certified as adults in murder cases, a process that would move the case to adult criminal court with its harsher sentencing options, including decades in prison. However, such certification requires proving the teenager's sophistication, maturity, and the failure of previous rehabilitation efforts. The decision whether to seek adult certification is among the most consequential in these cases, explained former juvenile prosecutor Maria Sanchez, who has no connection to this specific case. It essentially determines whether we're prioritizing punishment or rehabilitation, whether we see this as an irredeemable act or the terrible mistake of a still developing mind. The Galveston County District Attorney's Office moved swiftly, filing murder charges within the juvenile system while simultaneously beginning the evaluation process for potential adult certification. This dual-track approach kept all options open as investigators continued gathering evidence. 3 days after the shooting, the teenager made her first court appearance before juvenile court judge Raymond Garza. The proceedings remained closed to the public and press, another key difference from adult court. Inside the small courtroom, with only essential personnel and immediate family present, the judge explained the charges and the teenager's rights. When asked how she pled to the charge of murder, she responded with 2 quiet words, "Not guilty." This standard plea, entered on advice of counsel, set in motion a legal process that would stretch for months. Judge Garza ordered a comprehensive psychological evaluation, continued detention at the juvenile facility, and scheduled a certification hearing to determine whether the case would remain in juvenile court or transfer to the adult system. Outside the courthouse, family members from both sides of the tragedy, those who love Tiamoya and those who love her daughter, gathered in separate groups, the gulf between them seemingly unbridgeable. Alicia Giesinger, who identified herself as both family member and close friend to Tiamoya, became the unofficial spokesperson for the victim's side. In a tearful statement to reporters, she expressed the family's confusion and heartbreak. Tiamoya was trying to give her children the best life possible, Giesinger said. She was kind, loving. She would have done anything for her kids. "We can't understand how this happened. We're still in shock." When asked about the legal proceedings, Giesinger acknowledged the complexity of their emotions. "We want justice for Tiamoya, but this is her child too. Tiamoya loved her daughter. This isn't simple for any of us." The psychological evaluation, completed over several sessions at the Juvenile Detention Center, provided crucial insights into the teenager's mental state. While the full report remains sealed by court order, portions referenced during subsequent hearings indicated the evaluator found evidence of significant emotional disturbance, but no severe mental illness that would render her incompetent to stand trial. The teenager would be tried as a juvenile, a victory for the defense, but one that came with significant implications for how justice would be defined and measured. The court cannot ignore the defendant's age and developmental stage, Judge Garza stated in his ruling. While the alleged crime is undeniably serious, the juvenile system provides appropriate mechanisms for both accountability and rehabilitation. This ruling meant that if convicted, the maximum sentence would be confinement in a juvenile facility until age 19, followed by possible transfer to adult prison to complete a determinate sentence that could not extend beyond her 25th birthday. The prospect of this relatively short punishment for taking her mother's life left many of Tiamoya's supporters feeling that justice would remain incomplete. The case now moved toward trial, with both sides preparing for proceedings that would balance the community's demand for justice with the legal system's recognition that children, even those accused of terrible crimes, are fundamentally different from adults in the eyes of the law. As one juvenile justice expert observed, these cases force us to confront impossible questions. How do we punish a child for an adult crime? How do we balance a victim's right to justice with society's interest in rehabilitating young offenders? There are no easy answers. For Tiamoya's family, watching the legal process unfold brought little comfort. The system's focus on the teenager's future seemed, to some, to come at the expense of honoring Tiamoya's lost life. Yet others recognized that Tiamoya herself might have wanted rehabilitation for her daughter, despite everything. The path to justice had only begun, winding through a system designed for children, but now tasked with addressing one of the most adult crimes imaginable. In the days following Tiamoya Moore's death, Galveston struggled to process the tragedy. Makeshift memorials appeared on the porch where she fell, flowers, candles, handwritten notes from neighbors and friends. The community's grief manifested in vigils, fundraisers for her remaining children, and difficult conversations about what might have prevented such violence. This neighborhood has seen hurricanes, floods, economic hardship, but nothing prepared us for this, said Pastor Elijah Williams, who organized a prayer service at a church 3 blocks from Tiamoya's home. When violence happens between strangers, it's tragic. When it happens between mother and daughter, it shakes our fundamental understanding of family. For Tiamoya's other children, the tragedy created a devastating double loss, their mother gone forever, their sister removed to juvenile detention. Relatives stepped forward to care for the younger siblings, shielding them from media attention while trying to help them comprehend the incomprehensible. Alicia Giesinger, who had known Tiamoya since childhood, became the family's voice during this chaotic period. In an interview with local news, her pain was evident as she defended her friend's memory. People want to believe Tiamoya must have done something to deserve this, because the alternative is too frightening to accept, Giesinger said, wiping tears. The truth is she was a good mother doing her best. She loved all her children, including the daughter who took her life. Giesinger's perspective offered crucial insight into the family dynamics before the tragedy. The tragedy exposed critical gaps in youth support systems. While Galveston County offered some counseling services, waiting lists stretched for months. Private therapy remained financially out of reach for many families. School-based resources, though valuable, couldn't provide the intensive support some situations required. What happened to Tiamoya Moore represents a systemic failure, explained Dr. Renee Jackson, a youth psychologist who works with at-risk teens. When a young person exhibits warning signs, isolation, aggression, dramatic personality changes, families need immediate access to comprehensive support. Instead, they often face fragmented services, insurance barriers, and overwhelming bureaucracy. For the Galveston community, the tragedy forced uncomfortable reflections on how neighbors, schools, and institutions might have intervened. It raised questions about when and how communities should intervene when they observe concerning behavior in young people. Perhaps most poignantly, the tragedy revealed how isolation compounds family crises. After returning from California, Tiamoya had been rebuilding her support network, but still handled many challenges alone. Tiamoya Moore's life cannot be defined solely by its violent end. Before she became a headline, before her name was associated with tragedy, she was a woman of remarkable resilience and hope. Her journey back to Galveston represented a courageous choice to rebuild, to create stability for her children despite limited resources and personal challenges. The yellow house on Avenue Q, with its freshly painted porch and wind chimes, stood as testament to her determination. Neighbors remember her morning ritual of sweeping that porch while greeting passersby, her Sunday tradition of reading scripture in the afternoon sun, her celebration of even small achievements in her children's lives. She believed in second chances, Alicia Giesinger shared in our final interview. That's what her return to Galveston was about, giving herself and her children another opportunity to thrive. She faced struggles with faith that tomorrow could be better. This faith in possibility makes the tragedy all the more heartbreaking. Tiamoya was working to improve her circumstances, to strengthen her family bonds, to create the stable home her children needed. She was doing the difficult daily work of parenting through challenges, work that often goes unseen and unappreciated until it's absent. Questions remain about what ultimately led to that fatal confrontation on September 11, 2025. What final words passed between mother and daughter? What intervention might have changed their course? Could different resources, different timing, different support have prevented violence? These questions have no satisfying answers, only the hollow echo of what might have been. What's clear is that Tiamoya Moore's story matters beyond its tragic conclusion. It matters as a call to action for communities to strengthen safety nets around vulnerable families. It matters as a reminder that behind closed doors, parents and children sometimes struggle in desperate isolation. It matters as evidence that our systems for supporting families in crisis require fundamental transformation. If this story has affected you as it has affected us at Crime Scene Exposed, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue examining these complex cases with the depth and respect they deserve. Share this video with someone who works with young people or families, a teacher, counselor, community leader, who might help implement the changes needed to prevent similar tragedies. Tiamoya Moore was more than a victim. She was a mother working to create a better future, a woman of faith navigating difficult circumstances, a daughter of Galveston trying to reclaim her place in the community she called home. Her memory deserves to be honored not just through grief, but through meaningful action that protects other families from similar heartbreak. As her community continues to heal, as her remaining children grow without her guidance, as the legal case against her daughter proceeds through the juvenile justice system, Tiamoya's spirit remains in the wind chimes that still hang from her porch, a reminder that even lives cut tragically short leave lasting echoes in the hearts of those who remain.